I'm Warren Schaefer. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Knowable, and I am honored and flattered to be online at the same time with both of you who have established an online personal brand. Ahmed, you've just done a course for Knowable along with Kristin. That course is called Personal Branding for Real Humans, Real People. I consider myself a real person, but I'm also very scared of personal branding. And so I'm excited to talk with you personally. The format for this is, Ahmed, I think you're going to do a little bit of an intro for you and for Kristin, and then maybe walk the people who are online watching this through some slides and some tips on personal branding. And then I think we could kick it off to questions and answers, hopefully from you. And this will hopefully be a fun discussion. No pressure though. And I think
Me and Kristin have a lot of fun. Me and Kristin have a lot of fun every time we talk. Yeah.
I always have fun.
This is very fun. This has been the highlight of my day so far. Thanks. Cool. Well, personal branding. Ahmed, why don't you do your quick intro, and Kristin, your quick intro, and then let's talk personal branding and why that sounds to me like such a cringy term, but maybe it should be.
Sure. So Kristin, I'm going to do like my 5 little lessons that we did in the course, which you were involved with, and then I'll pass it over to you and you can introduce yourself.
Cool.
So mine will take a little bit longer, but I won't take too much of everyone's time.
Go for it.
It's just going to be.
I'm so sorry, I forgot. Can we do the quick poll first for the 70 plus people who are now live? We want to make this as interactive as possible. So I think we've got a quick poll. If you can just maybe stop sharing screen.
Okay, yeah, I can stop sharing the screen. 1 second.
Okay, and then quick poll. Let's see if we can launch it.
Yeah, I actually haven't used interactive features on Zoom very much. It's kind of pretty cool.
Neither have I. I didn't know they were existed.
Okay, we've got a poll. How happy are you with your current personal brand?
So are we gonna do I need to hold on to the share screen while we do this, or can they be done simultaneously?
I think let's do the poll and then off to you for the screen. No more interruptions.
Sounds good.
So if everyone who's watching could take a moment to answer this question: how happy are you with your personal brand? And I'm assuming that not everyone is very happy because they probably wouldn't be watching this.
Personal branding sadness.
Including me. I'm not very unhappy, but I'm somewhat unhappy.
There's always places for improvement.
yeah, definitely. Oh, 2% of people very confident.
I think that was me.
Me and you.
Yeah.
I put somewhat happy because I think there's always room for growth.
This is a pretty even distribution. So 37% of people say that they're somewhat happy. That is the leading category, which is good. So we're like somewhat happy. We're looking to be very happy here with our personal brands. About a third of the people are neutral, and then unfortunately 29% of us, including me, are somewhat unhappy or very unhappy. So hopefully we'll all go up the ladder of happiness after this call. And thank you for doing the poll, and thanks everyone for your answers.
All right, so I'm gonna kick it off here. So in case you're just you want to know more about what this course is, it's a course with Knowable that's about an hour, kind of a beginner course for personal branding. And when Knowable reached out to me, I was excited because like my name is Ahmed, and my name is Rad Brown Dads on Twitter. I have this strong personal brand that like I didn't think about a lot, but I learned a lot on the job, sort of through creating on the internet. Like I think one of the really powerful things is that the internet can make things happen for you from the privacy of your own home. And there's a lot of like lessons that people like me and Kristin, who really built our career that way, learned over time. And in that course, I sort of share them with you. I'm going to share like 5 quick lessons, and just the most basic idea is that regardless.
Sorry, I know I said I wouldn't interrupt, but you have this box in front of your screen which says warning.
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 I don't see that on my screen.
Oh.
What does it say? Warning.
Someone else mentioned it too in the comments. It's not just me, but
I'm sorry.
It's not really blocking things, and I'm sorry for.
That's okay. We'll just assume I have very radioactive.
I just wanted to let you know the air quality is very bad.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that it says warning. I don't see it on my screen. So.
I don't see it either, actually. So.
Oh, it just closed. Somebody just closed it.
Oh, well.
I'm not making this up. Okay.
So, I'm a writer, and in many ways I was an academic first, and I sort of wasn't happy with that, and I just began creating stuff on the internet, and that sort of changed everything for me. You know, I became a journalist soon after that, and then I became a podcaster, and like currently I'm freelancing. You know, I think I get a lot of calls from mentees who are asking, you know, how can I like make a pivot into, you know, like for instance, media industry. And I think there's some universal things that everyone is like an internet native, and to Kristin, who's also like a digital native. But part of my goal is to like get people moving, creating stuff. But in terms of just like why it's important, I think, you know, no matter what, your stuff is being seen online. You might have like your Twitter page that has like 200 followers that you never tweet on, and you might think like that doesn't say anything about you, but it does say something about you, because if it's empty, you know, it means that you've like you've sort of abandoned it and aren't using a platform that you could use. So I think it matters a lot. And for somebody like me who's like a freelancer, I need a volume of work, and I would say a huge amount of my online reputation brings me work. So that's like a really huge factor for your career. And even if you're not like a writer or journalist like me, you can share your learnings in your industry on social and online, and that will help your career in many ways. And the theory is the same whether you're like a writer primarily or you happen to be like a specialist. Like we talked to a hacker in the course who is trying to like explain like their digital security work to people online, and we give them a lot of the same tips that, you know, like me and Kristin would use. So another lesson is just that, you know, in this day and age, it's something that you can do very quickly. You can adapt your personal brand like today. It's not something that needs to be a it's something that you can quickly do. And it's a very strong way of sort of you know, adapting yourself and making a change. So one of the major lessons that me and Kristin talked about is about the fear of bad content. I think a lot of people have a plan. They say, I'm going to have a plan. I want to make an adaptation. I want to move into this industry, or I want to have like a bigger following where I, you know, explain hacking to the public. They make a 10-week plan, and they want it to be perfect the first time around. They do all this planning. But what me and Kristin learned is in our time is that you have to be willing to make bad content. You have to really learn in the doing. And me and Kristin will talk about that more. I'm going to leave that here, and there's more discussion of that in the content in the course. But I think that's like one of the biggest things is when people call me up, I say, how much stuff have you made? And a lot of times they're like perfecting the one thing, when in many times you need to be making hundreds or dozens of things before, you know, you really start making the good stuff that gets you the recognition and the career recognition that you want. So you have to start. The other thing is that I think people, when they work on different platforms, they think they're all the same. You know, a lot of times I see people with a big push.
Buzzfeed writing sports buzzy content. Like I wrote like just, and then I started writing things about like bodies. So I kind of like my journey to where I got to, how I got to where my journey to getting places is that I kind of tried a lot of different things and sort of saw like what I like to do and also what hit. And so a lot of, you know, what I ended up doing is the intersection between those two things. I think that's who I am. And also right now working on other stuff, and that's cool too.
And you guys are both in this course, this
yes.
course for Knowable on personal branding. And you also talk with another expert. I think can you talk a little bit about her, Ahmed?
Yeah, sure. Her name is Dory Clark, and she comes a lot more from, in a way I try to balance it, because I think what I know is the internet world and what Dory knows is the corporate world, right? So we sort of bring them together, where Dory is a you know, a recognized expert in personal branding. She sort of used her own personal branding strategy to make herself the, you know, sort of pro on that. And she shares, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like when you look up Dory, it's very clear what she's about and what she does. And I think that's like a really useful perspective, because not everyone is going to be, you know, as comfortable posting online in the way like somebody like me would be. But I think somewhere in the middle, there's something useful for everybody's career where they can make an impact that'll affect their career.
I want to let you guys know. So I'm going to be reading some of the comments and questions, and I want to encourage everyone who's listening to submit a question because we do want to spend some of this conversation talking about questions that people have because this course is for real people, and I think different people have different concerns about branding and how they express themselves online. One thing I want to call out, and you touched upon this already, but what I learned in this course is that personal branding is basically just another way of saying your online reputation today. Right, and rethinking that personal branding is something that you have a personal brand even regardless of whether you're managing it or not. Right, it basically is how do people think of you when you're online. And can you kind of talk us through the steps of why someone should improve their personal brand? Like, why should we care what our online reputation is? You touched upon this already, Ahmed, but can you elaborate on it?
Kristin, I would love for you to answer it if you feel comfortable, just because I did a lot of talking already.
Sure, I can. So, like, why our personal brands matter? Because honestly, people want to work with people that they like and trust. And that is true across every single industry, everywhere in the world. And so part of creating a personal brand that's good is creating a personal brand that is someone that people like and people trust. And, you know, I think that people, you know, obviously we have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources. If you kind of show to people that you're already someone that they can like and trust from the beginning, they're more willing to engage with you, take more of a chance on you. You know, you're going to stick out more, I think.
Yeah. But that quote you had on that of 85% of HR people are looking at you online, right? And I think Dory talks about this in the course, but one of the first things that people do when they find out they're going to work with somebody or they're thinking about working with somebody is Google them, right? And to be like, who are they online? So I'm going to suggest that we do another quick poll and just get a gauge for the audience, and that'll help me kind of filter through some of the questions that are coming in. So can we launch that poll?
I also think it's like the other great thing about creating a platform on the internet is that you get connected to folks that you never thought you would be connected to. You know, you get opportunities that wouldn't come to you otherwise if you weren't already known. Once you become known as like a known quantity in one industry, I mean, we live in such a like an intersectional kind of world that like you will find new stuff when you start, you know, when you start seeing the results from your actual brand, you start being able to expand and bring other things in as well.
Yeah, it's true.
So the results of the poll, 61% of people feel that their online brand today is a good reflection of who they are, which is higher than I would have expected. And 39% of people say no. So thanks for that poll. So I want to go to a question from Yina Huang, which is how to be time efficient and effective with engagement when repurposing content across multiple platforms. So Yina, thank you for the question, and then I'm going to Kristin off to you.
I think Kristin is the expert on this. I mean, she has my stuff. I have Twitter and iTunes, right? Those are two things, and they're very separate. Whereas Kristin has like a bunch of other platforms.
So here's the thing. This is a constant battle. It's almost impossible to get really good at this and not get burned out. So like, I think the first thing is to keep in mind that you need to cut yourself a little bit of slack. You're not going to nail it on every single platform for every single thing all the time. I would say that if something is text-based or a joke or something quick, it goes on Twitter. If something is a little bit more produced, it goes on Instagram. If something is somewhere in the middle, it goes on TikTok, or Reels if TikTok gets banned next week or whatever. So I think that like you sort of have to match what you're making to where you're putting it. Like if it's truly just like whatever, who cares, it goes on Facebook. So it's like unless it's like a highly produced video or whatever. I think there are some things where there's like a direct overlap. Like I think like YouTube and Facebook have pretty much an overlap. I think TikTok and Instagram are like a little bit of an overlap too. You can kind of repurpose stuff from there to there to help build. But like one thing I found that really doesn't work is like telling people on Instagram about my Twitter and telling people on Twitter about my Instagram. Like they don't care. Like I don't gain followers cross promoting between those two. Where I definitely gain followers is cross promoting between Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and TikTok. And like, which I don't understand.
Because they're different languages almost, right?
Yeah,
like
I
they're
know,
like
yeah.
they're different. Yeah.
That's really... I don't know why that is, but like Twitter. So I think that people follow me on different platforms for different reasons. And so, people on Instagram, they want to see clothes, and people on Twitter, they want to hear me like, yell about stuff. So it's like, they're kind of at cross purposes with each other. So you sort of have to you have to know what people are going to different places for and give them what they want there.
Can you do a quick summary of what, and you guys do this in the course, but what do you think sort of each platform is? Because this is something that you're talking about, which is don't make the same thing and put it on every single platform, which means every platform is unique. So what are the quick heuristics for what's LinkedIn, what do I put on LinkedIn versus what do I put on Facebook?
So I also just want to say real quick that when it comes to management of like across multiple platforms, you should really focus on one in the beginning. Like Kristin, you're talking to somebody who has been in the game for a while and has a huge following. Like she's an industry in her own right, like she has to manage all that stuff. But when you're first starting out, you don't have to think about all that stuff. You have to know. Yes. And when you're asking about platforms, Warren, you should think about who your audience is and where they congregate. So like, if you're an entrepreneur, LinkedIn is like the way to go. Like for me as a journalist, like journalists don't congregate on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn is Twitter. So I'm on Twitter most of the time. It really requires some research. You have to actually spend some time on the platform. And yeah, Kristin, maybe
actually, I do actually. So it's funny you should bring that up. I'm not on LinkedIn really at all. I have like 3 followers on LinkedIn. No one cares, but no one cares about me on LinkedIn. But my partner is a Unity engineer. And they have gotten every single job they've ever gotten, including pretty good jobs that I won't say because I don't want to blow up their privacy, but on LinkedIn, like literally every single job. And I'm just like, how is this? I've never gotten anything on LinkedIn beyond just like people from high school being like, do you know how to get a job at Buzzfeed? So it's like, I think it super depends on like what industry you're into. Right. Cause like there are networks that I look at that are like, it doesn't matter, that are like critical to certain industries.
Right. I think that's really helpful to a lot of people. Actually, Rana is asking this in the questions, which is, investing in time between Instagram, Twitter, and starting TikTok. Is it okay to just delete Facebook? I.e., when is it okay to just ignore a platform and invest in others? And what I'm hearing from both of you is different platforms have different audiences and serve different ends. And start with the area where you feel like you're best. Right, and your most authentic self, and post there and focus there, and it's okay to ignore others, including Facebook. So.
Yeah, I think it's totally okay. I think a lot of people, I hear this all the time. I want to get into Twitter. Maybe if you're having trouble with Twitter, it's not the platform for you. Maybe you need to find it's okay to not be on Twitter. I would rather just not be on Twitter and not have your Twitter account with 200 followers and focus on something. It's like it can be overwhelming. Twitter is a very overwhelming platform.
It is. Like, actually, it's funny if you look at someone just as a case study, like Tess Holliday, who's like a plus size model. I think she has something like close to 2 million followers on Instagram, and she has I think less than 100,000 Twitter followers. So it's like, and she has a house, so if you don't have to be on Twitter, by all means, please run away.
Enough people on Twitter.
I know.
or Facebook also.
Really, honestly, yeah. If you don't have to, I mean, God love you. That's great for your life. You don't have to do that to yourself.
I want to poke on this a little bit because there is this tension of it's not always fun to post stuff, right? And you can get kind of lost. You go to post something and you try to be value add, but then you might get caught up in some political tweet storm or whatever distracting thing, and then maybe you don't feel so good about yourself. How do you find balance between spending time online and building your personal brand, and then also thinking about time outside of brand building and reputation management?
So also you need at least one thing that is low-hanging fruit that is satisfying for you. Like if you're a political junkie, you're gonna enjoy reading about politics on Twitter. If you're an art person, you're gonna enjoy reposting art on Twitter. If you're an art museum curator, one of the Bonnie Warburton in here is asking a question about, I don't want my Twitter to reflect who I am as a person, but rather these are the kind of jokes I write. There's the other aspect too, which is one of it is low-hanging fruit, and the other thing is you invest in. You need both. For Bonnie, if she's a comedian, like she's going to spend a lot of time on her jokes, and her Twitter is not going to be like what me and Kristin are talking about, which is like posting all the time and figuring it out. She's going to focus really, really hard on like only having jokes on her Twitter, like being a comedy person on Twitter. That is a niche that people have like gone on to be on TV with. So it all depends on what you're trying to do. But I do think a mix of low-hanging fruit and like ambitious projects is really important.
I would add to Bonnie's question, I think that what a lot of Twitter comedians do is their Twitter account becomes like a character, and like that character is maybe they're playing themselves, but it's themselves telling jokes. And what that means is that they're not doing like a lot of earnest posting or like a lot of like, you know, a side note, like my dog ate a sock today, and like it's tragic and not funny. And I think that like consistency is really important there, because I think that if sometimes you're doing like the weird Twitter thing of like writing the ironic joke and then sometimes you're sincere, people can get confused about like who you're trying to be. And so you just have to be like kind of consistent if who you're trying to play is the character yourself, a person who's a comedian on Twitter.
Right. There's a lot of questions in here about consistency. And I do think you learn as you do it, as we were mentioning earlier, Kristin. Like I started my career actually reporting on video games, but anytime I would do tweets about video games, they wouldn't go anywhere. No one gave, like nobody would respond. I you know, and that's like a huge part of my like like IRL brand. Like I'm really interested in games, but I don't really put it on my socials because I do it occasionally, but like very, very minimally, because I know that it doesn't get engagement and it's not useful for my followers. Like it might be nice for me to like put out like an analysis of a game, but if no one's reading it, like maybe I'll just save it for a group chat, you know, as opposed to, you know, putting it out there. So I think you figure it out as you go. Like if you have like a wide range of interests and you don't have like the specific focus, like I want to be like a, you know, comedy writer or something, then you kind of learn by what gets engagement, and you kind of take those seeds and you grow that side. Yes,
absolutely.
So Bonnie is saying, amazing advice, double exclamation point. Thank you so much, double exclamation point. So thank you, Bonnie. Thanks again for the question.
Oh boy.
I want to get to another question. There's a lot of good ones coming in. So Shanna Lasseras says, hi there, can you talk about how to approach personal branding if you're desiring a career change, i.e. how to present yourself during the transition? So let's say we were pursuing a comedy career on Twitter and now we want to button things up. What's the advice?
Actually, I can give some advice about this from my own life. So let's say that you are like really, really trying to like make like a 360. I think that it's important not to announce your 360 until you're not your 360, because that would imply you're in the same place at the end. 180. Whenever you're going to announce your 180, I think you need to say what you're 180ing to. So it can't just be, I'm not going to do this anymore, nothing. I think that you need to use, I'm not going to do this anymore, as a news peg to kind of announce that you're going to do something else. And then you're switching your consistency to that something else. But yeah, so just saying like, I'm not going to do this anymore is kind of like, you're kind of just bumming people out and you're not really helping yourself. So it's like, save the news until you have something to pivot to.
I'll also say, you know, reach out to other people in your industry who have made that pivot. Like, do a lot of back channel conversations before you do the public facing ones, because you'll see other success stories in that way. You know, I think rebranding is very common, and probably just like any business, like probably the majority of them kind of fail, which is okay. That's not like a bad thing. Like that's a part of trying something, is like you're going to fail in the beginning. But I think you basically need to like find models that have worked, because shifting things is really hard, and you can gain guidance from other people, and you know they'll help prop you up too if you start investing in other people in the industry. Like, look, this person is doing this amazing thing now, and that'll help your success by being connected to those other folks. If you do it kind of like isolated, maybe nobody will notice. So it's important to kind of build your network out.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. We have another question, which is, how do you assess the quality or rating of your online reputation? So how do we even know how we're doing?
So I'll just say one quick thing from the course, which is we give a couple of exercises to explain that. It's similar to what I just said, which is like you reach out to trusted family and friends, and you kind of have them do a 3-word exercise where they kind of describe your brand to you, and you'll be surprised sometimes by how different difference between how you perceive yourself and how your friends, family, audience perceives you. And sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised, like, oh, actually, this thing that I've been working on, people are seeing that. That's just like a very qualitative way to doing it. There's also a quantitative way of doing it, which some like maybe Kristin can speak more to, about like how, you know, you can see some things go viral or like reach a lot of people. Like, Kristin, do you think about like, do you care more about like views or like engagement? You know what I mean? Because that's one question, I guess.
Depends on the platform. I mean, I think it kind of depends on the platform. I think on like a place like YouTube, it's more about views and watch time. On a place like, I think everything else, it's kind of more about like, it's more about engagement. I would say that, so here's the thing, everyone's growth is going to be different. And also a lot of platforms right now are like, they're not the best place to grow. There's literally one platform right now that's like, it's kind of easy to grow, and that's TikTok. Every other platform, it's like, unless you become famous for something completely unrelated, it's tougher to grow. So I would say that you should maybe not, I think it's like it's about setting metric goals for yourself and then meeting those goals and then figuring out why you may not be meeting those goals. Because I think that like trying to, you know, you can't just look at like an Instagram and be like, this is a successful Instagram, because like an Instagram is like a living thing. It grows, it loses followers, it gains followers, you know, so it's like you have to treat it like a plant. You know, you kind of have, actually it's a good way of putting it. It's a lot like a plant. You got to keep watering, you got to keep giving it food. As long as it's alive, it's a successful plant. When it dies, it no longer is. But so like, for example, like my Instagram, the first year I had Instagram, I gained like 10,000 followers, and it took me like 12 months to get there. And I was already on Buzzfeed, so like that helped. And then I got to 100,000 the year after, and then I got to 300,000 the year after. So it was like, it kind of became,
it was like that kind of curve. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but like honestly, the best way to get followers is to get followers. So it's like it's going to be small at first, but it's like you kind of have to figure out like what things are you making that people are engaging with, and how can you make more than that. The thing I always think is that it's like you're trying to figure out like what people like about you and also what you like giving them, and doing stuff that's in the intersect, because that's the way it's the most sustainable and also will grow the most.
I think that's such a great way to describe and what you talk about in the course. And so I want to pause a little bit on that point, which is what you like putting out into the world, what other people like, that intersection is what really makes for good online reputation building.
Yeah.
Right. And you guys go into detail about how to do that in the course, like finding what you like doing and what other people resonate with as well. I want to do a quick poll just so we can tailor the rest of the time that we have. So I want to just ask what people think is the most important social platform for their own personal brand right now.
By the way, Kristin, I described in the course your social brand or your personal brand journey as a jog. You got to take breaks, drink the Gatorade, but you always got to keep going. It's not a sprint. It's not a sprint.
No, it's not a sprint. Like, I mean, you can take breaks. Like, you can take, Ali Brush, who does Hyperbole and a Half, is publishing a book this year after not having published a book for 7 years. And people are so excited about it. Yeah. So it's like, you know, if ever you're like, I took a break too long. It's like, she took a break for 7 years and she's okay. Like, you know, chill. It's going to be fine.
So poll results are in. 41% of people think that Instagram is the most important social platform for their personal brand, followed by LinkedIn, close second, and then Twitter, and the other three, Pinterest, Facebook, TikTok, basically non-existent for this audience. So it feels like Instagram and LinkedIn are the two bulk categories for this audience. So maybe we can talk a little bit specifically about each of those platforms. It sounds like, Kristin, you probably know a lot about Instagram.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I think a lot of people will sympathize with, which is how to post consistently online, especially if it feels like just one more thing to do and you already have a full schedule. So,
well, so this is something that you will struggle with everyone struggles with, unless you have like a professional staff who's helping you post. Here's like a hot tip: a lot of famous people do. Like a lot of famous people do. So like you can look at famous people's Instagrams and be like, how are they posting all the time? It's because they have staff. So like, you know, first of all, cut yourself some slack. But second of all, I think on Instagram, there's honestly a hard upper limit to how much you should post. I think any more than like when you're starting out, I think any more than once a day is too much. I think there are like some big brand pages that post multiple times a day, but like they're, you know, those are big accounts and like with kind of a big tent content operation. So it's a little different. So I would say that if you're posting like, if you're posting like 3 times a week to Instagram, like that's fine. And then I think like it's just a matter of like finding stuff that you would share with people that you like, that you know. So it's like, here's a good example actually. So my this is sad actually. My Nana recently died, and so like my aunt is going through, I know. Well, it's the part of the story yet to tell. But my Nana's going through like her stuff, and she found like some photos of me as a kid, and like they're great photos of me as a kid. And so I started sending them to people, and I was like, oh, I should just put this on Instagram, because if it's something that people who care about me in my life want to see, then it's something that people who care about me in like the world also want to see. And so I think it's a matter of just kind of not overthinking of it and thinking of like of your audience as sort of an extended version of like your friends and family bubble. Like what would you, within your comfort level, what would you share with them? So like you don't always have to be like super polished and like here's my pose and stuff like that. Like sometimes it can just be like, here's, you know, a picture of like me, you know, messing around in the kitchen and I got some dough on my face. Cause like people, you know, if they care about you, they'll care about that stuff too.
And the other aspect of it is think about, take tips from like these like top social creators, which is they do low hanging stuff, which is reacting, retweeting, sharing. Like if you're thinking like if the struggle of posting is a problem, what do you like reading? Read those things and engage with them. Or what do you like looking at on Instagram? Like you might see like a project that you really like, repost it, give your thoughts on it. That doesn't take you much time because you're already doing it anyway. If you're on these platforms as a consumer, you can do some of that aspect as well. Obviously, like you need to like balance it with like productive stuff, like Kristin is saying. Like you do need some useful stuff that is creative, but everybody does this. Everybody reacts to everyone does the I react to this thing, and they do it on every platform. You know, like economics professors are reacting to like a story in the New York Times. You know what I mean? Like
no one owns reacting.
Yeah.
As much as the Fine brothers would argue with you, no one owns reacting.
Right. So be comfortable. Like if you're having trouble coming up with stuff, just comment on other stuff, because you have useful thoughts in your own industry. You're gonna have a unique perspective, and maybe people will come to you for that as well.
Yeah.
A big thing that you guys are hitting on is be useful, and you talk about this a lot in the course and go deeper into it. But can you talk about what does it mean to be useful today in online media? Like what is something that is there a person who you look at and you think, wow, they're really doing a good job? Maybe they're not a huge follower, they don't already have a huge following, but they're starting to build credibility. What is it that they're doing?
You know, I think I can answer this. I think that like there's different degrees of usefulness. I think that like, you know, I think we're talking practically about usefulness in an industry, like as a journalist or as a professional in some way, shape or form, giving useful advice, or if like you're a food person or stuff like that. But I think there's also a large degree of usefulness, both in advocacy and also affirming other people's experiences. So, and I think that like basically the whole mommy blogger sphere is built around usefulness in terms of affirming other people's experiences and making people feel less alone. And I think that like it's important to not I think that like we think of ourselves as only being useful in terms of like having wisdom or things to share, but sometimes the way that which we're useful is we're sort of affirming what other people are feeling and giving voice to it.
Right. I'm so happy you said that, Kristin, because it made me realize how much that is inherent to my idea already. Like, you know, like affirming other people's experience is a huge part of my work and your work both. And we both, I think, have felt like struggled with like not being reflected in media, and everything isn't perfect always. You know, it's just like, it's just showing the reality of living as like a Muslim person, for instance, for myself, like that can be useful to people as well. You know, it doesn't have to be like data or like it can be slice of life stuff as well. It can be a mix.
Mm-hmm.
I know personally, I find that when people are vulnerable, that's when I feel most connected to them. But it's also one of the things that feels most scary to do, right? I mean, before this talk, we were talking, you admitted, and I hope it's okay with me sharing this, but that you were nervous, right? You're like, I always feel nervous. I do this all the time, but I feel nervous. And that made me feel much more comfortable because I thought, oh, wow, like Ahmed does this a lot. And if he's still nervous, that makes me feel more comfortable and also more connected to you, honestly, right? Because I think you know, as a human and not just a social media whiz. Can you talk about vulnerability today and how to find that balance of being your authentic self and also being valuable? How do you think about that?
So I think it's become a huge part of every industry and career, is like talking about the stress of work and producing stuff. You know, I think it does connect people to you. You know, this sort of like tough boss who never gets knocked down is like that kind of archetype is kind of fading away as we move towards like more realistic views of what work is. And I think it is scary. It is definitely scary to admit the truth, and you don't have to tell everyone everything about yourself, but you can pick things that you're comfortable sharing. I think knowing what you're comfortable sharing before you start, like, you know, using it as like your socials as like a journal is good to know. Like, you should know your boundaries, I think.
I think that's a good segue. Agree. I think that's a good segue into this next question, which is, what are some things that people should not do when thinking about building their online reputation and their personal brand?
I think the most important thing, and this is a BuzzFeed lesson I'm stealing, I think that at all times you should avoid punching down. I think that try always to punch up. And if you're not sure whether or not you're punching up, like, you know, think about like where you are relative to like your privilege, your position. You know, I think that like nobody likes people who aren't aware of their position in life and is mindful of that and how it relates to others. And I think that like that's actually a really good, solid coverall advice for like, am I going to be problematic online? It's like, are you punching down? Like, are you attacking people with less privilege and power than you? Then yeah. So it's like, you know, knowing kind of where you are and understanding that, I think is like really, it's like, you know, online etiquette 101.
That's really great advice. Thanks, Kristin. What about you? Anything that you think people should be, especially starting out, what should people avoid?
I mean, this is sort of like a do rather than an avoid, sorry, but I think reading and following a lot of people with different perspectives of from yours, which Kristin is getting at, will really open your mind to what's possible and what is like, what success looks like. And I think part of everyone's like people who are starting who are paralyzed is because they see like only like success stories at the biggest level, but everyone has little success stories within their own little industry. And you'll see that once you start following people who don't share your identity, you know, are of a different background from you, and it'll let you understand that this is a journey and that like you are building something that is not just for your followers or for your audience, but for yourself as well. And I just think it's like a healthy tactic. And I think that don't hear is that there's a lot of people who have a big idea of what they want to do and they start working on it without reading a lot. I think reading a lot is important, and reading a diversity of opinions is really, really important to avoiding messing up.
Right. But I want to call it something though, Kristin, you said, which is not everyone who's really famous and polished and has a huge following is doing this all on their own, right? So there is this trap of looking at what somebody else does and thinking, oh, well, they're doing it, so I should be able to post 3 times a day and have these highly polished, pithy tweets, when really those are, it's like a fabrication of a fabrication, I guess.
Right.
Yes.
So being okay with being human about the personal brand experience and not assuming that you're going to have it a totally well-oiled machine day one.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I know we're at time, so for those of you who have stuck around, I want to share a code, which is 25% off for the course that Ahmed and Kristin lead. That code is BRANDS, and you can use it on checkout at the website knowable.fyi. You'll see Ahmed is on the cover of the course. It's a very cool course cover. And are you guys okay? Can we take one more question?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Find one. Somebody just asked, avoid punching down. I think maybe not everyone knows exactly what this is, and such an important thing to call out, especially given the unfortunate toxicity in a lot of social media today. So Kristin, can you actually just define for everyone, what is punching down? How do I know if I'm punching down?
Okay. So I think punching down is when you are going after people who have less privilege and power than you are. So like I, am, I'm a fat queer white woman. So like, that means that like I have white privilege, but like obviously I'm a woman, I'm queer, I'm fat. So like I don't have those. So like, it means that like when it comes to issues of race, I need to do more listening than talking. In fact, I need to do most of the listening and not a lot of the talking, because if I'm like running my mouth about stuff, I'm polluting the area with, information and opinions that people don't need. And so I think that like a lot of punching down is sort of inserting yourself in discussions where your point of view or opinion is already oversaturated, and not allowing people who are more marginalized to have their points of view and lived experiences rise to the top. Like punching down, I think a good example of punching down in my life is sometimes people will get in my mentions and be like, have you thought about like doing this like weight loss course? Or have you thought about doing, oh yeah, one time someone wrote a card and sent it to the office and was just like, thank you so much, you've changed my life. I just want you to know that because of you, I finally got like the courage to lose weight, because like, I really, I didn't want to like live my life the way that like you looked like you were suffering. And I was like, what? That would be an example of punching down. That's someone who's taking their thin privilege and using it to like kind of hurt me. So right. I think punching down is like making sure that you don't use your privileges against people who don't have those privileges.
Right.
There's always a news story of like some music person online, fighting one of their followers who has like 200 followers. Those people can just, they're very famous. Like they don't even need, that's like the biggest version of it. Like they don't even need to engage. Just don't engage in that scenario, You save your energy to fight with people who have more power than you or are causing more systematic harm as opposed to personal harm. I think punching down is like about interpersonal stuff, and punching up is about like fighting systemic problems or bigger problems that can really make an effect in people's lives. Usually punching down doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody feels better off after a road rage incident. It's like the equivalent of road rage, right? Of getting mad at somebody and you don't know what's going on in their life, and just better to right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for answering that. And I guess the ancillary of punching up, a strategy that a lot of people use is try to make other people look good and actually give praise when praise is due.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about that and leave on hopefully an uplifting note?
Yes.
Any recommendations on how to make other people look good on social media?
Promote other people's stuff. Honestly, promote people that you believe in. Honestly, be a good reply guy. I know we talk a lot about like bad reply guys, like people who kind of get in your mentions and are like, well, I don't know about this stuff. But everyone always likes a good reply guy. And that's like someone who's just supportive in like a non-toxic, non-creepy way, or saying like, that was a great idea, or that's really funny, or stuff like that. So like, I think that that's, a way for people to see that like you're someone who's uplifting other people's content.
Yeah.
Warren, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I think it's such a challenge. I think it's the idea of a scarcity mindset versus a mindset of plenty. And if anything, we've seen with the like diffusion of like all the voices, because the internet has happened, like regardless of all the challenges of the internet, it has in some ways allowed a lot of voices like my own to have a platform and build a career off of it. And there isn't only going to ever be one person doing the thing that you're doing. There's always going to be somebody who does it a little differently than you, and that's good. You guys should share and collaborate with each other. If you respect somebody's work, you're not necessarily in competition with them. You can be more powerful together often. And also people who are very different from you, like Kristin says, like recognizing and being positive about the work that is useful will probably produce more work that you like. Whereas trying to hoard, your influence or your success is going to make it more challenging for people in the future.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for sharing your hard-earned wisdom with this audience. And sorry for those of you whose questions we didn't get to. Feel free to email hello@knowable.fyi if we didn't answer your question, and we'll try to get it answered. And again, thank you for everyone who took the time out of their Monday to learn about how to build their online reputation. You can obviously learn more in the course. And check out the website knowable.fyi, and again, the discount code for those who have stuck through is brand. You can apply that on checkout at the website. Ahmed, Kristin, anything I didn't ask you that I should have that you'd like to let the audience know about?
Don't make a brand making stuff that you don't like to make. That's a trap.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you listen to yourself.
That's a trap. Don't do it.
What feels useful and good is probably the better stuff. It can be, we have an image of ourselves that we have that is not always going to be helpful to your career. It's a struggle. Yeah. But also follow me on Twitter at radbrowndads.
Always promoting.
Follow my podcast, say something on iTunes. You gotta always have the action item at the end there.
That's important. That's important today. Gotta be useful. Don't be too bashful about promoting yourself.
As long as you do it with the tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Definitely follow these two. They are both very talented, wonderful humans. And thank you again for sharing these tips with the audience. And I think we're going to end on this positive, happy note. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Monday, and good luck building your personal brand, you real people.